Before we start, I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone who voted for the poll for this question over on Twitter. It really was the inspiration for this video given how close the poll ended up being. If you'd like to join in on the fun, think about following the channel over on Twitter, @SW Reading Club. Thank you again, and let's jump into the video. At the age of 70, the then Jedi Master Dooku rescinded his position within the Jedi Order, leaving the tenants and colleagues who he dedicated his entire life to for decades. Following his departure, the story of Dooku seems to be fairly simple. He fell to the dark side, joined Darth Sidious, and was trained as a Sith Lord within the lineage of Darth Bane's order. But the evidence that exists for this particular path for Dooku isn't as simple as it appears, as there are strong reasons that suggest that Dooku was not a true Sith Lord by the time of his death in Revenge of the Sith. Rather, Dooku's primary motivations were outside of mere affinities for the dark side, the Sith, and even Sidious. In this video expose, I will describe why Dooku was never a true Sith Lord, but an individual who was used as a pawn by Sidious, and who himself was never motivated by furthering the plans of the Sith, but his own political ambitions. At the start, let me set out that this question will be answered on the basis of the Legends material, and not that of the canon. To be honest, the evidence that exists in regard to Dooku being a true Sith is contradictory when you compare Dooku's actions in Legends and those taken in the canon. Looking only at the canon material, I would say that the arguments presented in this video wouldn't be valid, and that it would probably be easier to conclude the opposite, and say Dooku was a true Sith Lord. Combining Legends and canon is just a real mess. But looking at just Legends, I believe that we can safely say that Dooku was not a true Sith Lord, and with that conclusion in mind, let's take a look at some of these Legends materials. The first reason why I would argue that Dooku wasn't a true Sith Lord is because he was never motivated by the belief that the dark side was superior to the light, nor was he driven to complete the goals of the Sith Order that started 1,000 years earlier with Bane. In fact, it can't even be said that Dooku wished to enact revenge upon the Jedi or destroy their order on the basis of philosophical differences. Dooku's primary and singular focus in allying with the Sith was the desire to carry out his political ambitions, namely, the eradication of the corruption personified by the Republic and Galactic Senate, and the institution of a new government that was pure, direct, and which didn't need to garner the favor of senators who Dooku saw as the ignorant rabble. This singular motivation is set out clearly within the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which states, "At the age of 70, Dooku's principles would no longer allow him to serve a republic in which political power was for sale to the highest bidder." These political ambitions were motivating Dooku's actions to leave the Jedi Order long before he ever knew that Palpatine was a Dark Lord of the Sith. In the Darth Plagueis novel by James Luceno, Dooku tells Palpatine, again, long before ever knowing that he was a Sith, that, "I'm being honest when I tell you that the Republic needs to be torn down and built up again from the ground up." Importantly, the scene in which this discussion takes place occurred around the time of the Phantom Menace, and Dooku's frustrated that the Jedi High Council will do nothing to rise up against the corruption of the Republic. Clearly, Dooku's motivation to leave the Jedi Order is his exasperation with the corruption of the Republic, and the apathy of the Jedi in their failure to not just do nothing about it, but to continue to blindly serve the institution despite its corruption. As we learn in the Darth Plagueis novel, Dooku leaves the Order before knowing that Palpatine is a Sith, indicating that the catalyst for Dooku's action is his political views, and not his allegiance to the dark side or to the Sith. This made Dooku a true member of the Lost, becoming the group's 20th member. And it must be remembered that the Lost 20 was a group of Jedi who voluntarily resigned their commission within the Order due to ideological differences, not that they fell to the dark side. Dooku's membership in the Lost 20 is fitting, as his leaving the Order was the result of a difference in ideology regarding galactic politics, and not Dooku's fall to the dark side. Dooku's membership in the Lost is not just fitting, but telling, since as we stated previously, Dooku left the Order long before knowing Palpatine was a Sith. Interesting enough, I believe that joining the Sith was the most expedient way that Dooku could bring his political ambitions into reality, and had he never learned about Sidious and the Sith, he would have brought about these ambitions through other means. But the Revenge of the Sith novelization contains other evidence suggesting that Dooku's alliance with the Sith was driven primarily by his political ambitions, thereby preventing Dooku from being a true Sith Lord. Dooku's hatred for the Republic and its corruption is apparent in the novelization. When it's suggested that Dooku could have used his immense wealth, which he garnered upon assuming his hereditary title as Count of Sereno, to buy the influence of the Republic by purchasing corrupt senators, Dooku's principles could never have allowed him to do it. As it's described, Dooku would never want to be the lord of a garbage heap, wherein scavengers merely squabbled for the scraps they could receive. That was the basis in which Dooku defined the Republic. And therefore, he was motivated not by fulfilling the Sith imperative starting with Darth Bane, or in dedicating himself to the dark side, but rather, driven to cleanse the galaxy from the decay of the Republic and institute a new order. We know that this is what motivated Dooku, as the novelization refers to the new government that he plans to replace the Republic with as his, quote, Star of Destiny, which had been his end goal for years. Clearly, Dooku's endgame is not the same as Sidious's, not even close. Where Sidious sees the Empire as a means to his ends, which is unlocking the full secrets of the dark side and achieving immortality, Dooku sees the new government as the end itself. Therefore, joining the Sith is the way in which Dooku sees his end goal being achieved, not a dedication to the dark side. And as we would then expect, Dooku has already established his view of what his new government would look like, and by the end of the Clone War, Dooku isn't looking forward to the rule by the Sith, but with the establishment of a new order. As Dooku envisions it, the new government would be one that was clean, pure, and direct, wherein the government would be authority personified, and there would be no need to gain the favor of the ignorant senators who he greatly despised. Power and authority would be in the hands of those who deserved it, namely, people like himself and Sidious. There would be no inefficient scramble for favor within the corrupt Senate, and there would certainly be no reliance upon the politicians Dooku saw as corrupt and narcissistic. No, Dooku's new government would involve no negotiation or mediation, only the enforcement of rules that those in authority desired. One of the most important points within the Revenge of the Sith novelization that demonstrates just how much Dooku's political goals motivated his actions and represented his true endgame, and how little the Sith and dark side influenced him in relation to his politics, is the statement in the novelization that Dooku would serve the Empire that Sidious was going to create and lead. And to be sure, Dooku was willing to serve not Sidious or the Sith, but serve the new Empire itself, which is a crucial distinction. The fact that Dooku was happy to serve the new government is mentioned on two separate instances in the novelization, clearly demonstrating that Dooku isn't out for power, but for change, and more specifically, a change in political structures to oversee galactic affairs. It probably isn't fair to do this, but I would like to bring up a quote that Dooku gave to Tarkin in the novel Tarkin by James Luceno. The Tarkin novel is canon, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, starting to pull together evidence from both canon and legends can start to make answering this question extremely messy. But there is a tremendous quote from Dooku that perfectly captures his political endgame and his chief desire for a new government, rather than anything involved with the dark side itself. As Dooku was trying to recruit Tarkin to the Separatist cause, months before the Clone War started, when the Count informed the future Grand Moff that he was committed to an idea of the galaxy ruled by an enlightened leader and universal laws, and after Tarkin accused Dooku of simply viewing himself as this so-called enlightened leader, Dooku responded by stating, "I am ambitious, but not to that degree." Again, I won't say too much about this scene from Tarkin as it is canon material, and the sentiments conflict with some actions Dooku took in the Clone Wars TV series, but I believe Dooku's response to Tarkin perfectly encapsulates his point of view that exists in Legends. I believe Dooku when he says that he isn't so ambitious that he needs to be the one at the top of the Empire. What's more important is that there is an Empire that exists, even if he is some small part in it. We should note that this would be an ambition that would come naturally to a true Sith Lord. Darth Plagueis was keen on positioning himself as the ruler of the galaxy. Sidious of course was as well. But Darth Vader's example is perhaps the most important. Vader was almost instantly ambitious and covetous enough of the idea to rule the galaxy once he turned to the dark side. However, Dooku didn't have a desire to rule, but to simply ensure that democracy and the Republic was destroyed, which is made perfectly clear throughout the early scenes of the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And this gets to the heart of our argument here. Dooku joined the dark side and the Sith merely for a way in which to bring about his political desires, and joining Sidious was the best way to create the changes for the Republic that he wanted. In this sense, then, Dooku wasn't a true Sith Lord. So there we have it, part 1 of why Dooku wasn't a true Sith Lord, on the basis of his motivations being primarily political in nature. But there's still a lot more to discuss in part 2 that will be released tomorrow, which will include why Dooku was merely a pawn for Sidious, how he was blind to the important concept of the Rule of Two, and even to Sidious's plan for the Jedi through Order 66, and finally, his lack of dark side training and power. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for regretting everything.